Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I hope you are doing very well today. So, continuing with my discussion of some films in the Criterion collection, today what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about a filmmaker who has a couple films in the Criterion collection physical media catalog that might be films that might be some things that could interest you. Who knows, perhaps they might be films that you might be interested in purchasing during the current Barnes & Noble Criterion Collection sale, which is going on right now, as it's the month of November 2019. So I'm not sure I'm not sure if these films are for everyone, because the films themselves, I think, are quite, in terms of their subject matter, they can be quite intense, very shocking in some places. So if you are maybe not so keen on watching films of a kind of intense nature, then perhaps these films aren't for you. However, if you are okay with watching kind of intense melodramatic films that have a real sharpness of narrative and singular focus that is both stark and gritty in a kind of cinematic realism that it's trying to achieve on the one hand, and then on the other hand having an almost just a magical, almost symphonic quality to them in terms of their cinematic poetry that is achieved in the images and the sound, then I think these films are certainly for you. So it's my pleasure to just talk very briefly about the films in the Criterion collection that were directed by the great filmmaker from the Philippines, Lino Brocka. So the first film that I want to bring to your attention is Spine number 926. This is Manila in the Claws of Light. This is from 1975. This is a really gritty, intense melodrama film, and it also has a kind of sensibility about it in terms of it being a melodrama. It has a plot that has a kind of almost it has a sort of wild ride sensibility about it, in the sense that it has certain twists and turns in the narrative that I think are quite shocking and very much a part of the tableau of narrative melodrama in film. However, that's not a bad thing. And in fact, the film plays on those cinematic norms in a way that, however, seems to also achieve a kind of stark, gritty, I don't want to say realism, but there's a stark grittiness to the film that grounds the film in a way that is very shocking, very much in your face. There are a lot of situations in the film that are that unfold in quite a savage and almost menacing pace. The film therefore becomes almost a tableau, if you will, of this world at the time, the mid-1970s, Manila, and it's a savage, cruel world that is being painted. And it's being painted by a filmmaker that is also trying to provide the story of these characters that are really trying to do the very best they can in the situations that they respectively find themselves. So at once it is a purely human drama where the stakes are very high and the emotions are heightened in a melodramatic, some might even say Shakespearean flourish that really is a true poetic feat of cinema. And upon watching this film, I marvel at the ways in which it extends almost beyond its boundaries as a film, and it just goes in so many places that it's not afraid to go in, and it it doesn't hesitate to challenge the viewers. It doesn't hesitate to try new things with the way in which it's trying to approach the medium of cinema. At least that's how I feel when I see the film. It feels like a living, breathing, organic thing that is just trying to provoke one as one is watching it. It is an astounding work of art. Lino Brocka's Manila in the Claws of Light. It is a very difficult film in some places, but it is utterly rewarding. And I think that if you are okay with watching sort of intense film dramas, then this film is undeniably powerful. And I have no hesitation at all of recommending this to people who have not yet seen it. I've spoken about this film in some videos in the past, but I wanted to bring it to your attention here. So this is Manila in the Claws of Light. This is the Blu-ray, spine number 926, Lino Brocka. But Lino Brocka is, he's very prolific, or he was a prolific filmmaker. Unfortunately, he left this world much too young. And and unfortunately, the Criterion Collection doesn't have a lot of his films. And I understand that I understand that many of his films are actually quite difficult to get with maybe English subtitles or something like that. So I'm still very grateful that we have Manila in the Claws of Light, which is one of those towering achievements in cinema. But we also are very fortunate, my friends, in that we have this set, which is the Martin Scorsese's World Cinema Project #2 set. There's also #1 set, which I hopefully might talk about in a separate video one of these days. But the reason why I bring this set up, #2 set, is because this is a box set that has a number of films of world cinema. And one of the films that is included is, in fact, another film by Lino Brocka. So unfortunately, for purposes of purchasing Blu-rays in physical media, or fortunately, depending on one's point of view, of course, you can only get this film that I'm about to talk about in this set. I don't think it's made available individually. But don't worry, my friends, because this set, the #2 set and the #1 set, are among the best box sets that Criterion has ever released, in my opinion. I will try to talk about the #2 set and the #1 set in a separate video, but for now, my friends, in the meantime, let me speak about one film in the #2 set, which is from 1976. Now, this film is given its own spine number of 874. The film is Insiang, or Insiang. So the film is another bold, dynamic, savage, cruel, intense, hyper-realized melodrama set in the sort of slums of Manila, if you will. And it's really a film about relationships between men and women, and the kinds of real ups and downs that those relationships can have. There is a sort of savage cruelty as well in this world, in the way in particular that certain men that are depicted in this film treat the women in this film. It's quite harsh and sometimes very difficult to watch, but it is so, there is always a point in terms of the narrative that is being told here. And believe me, the narrative is quite stunning and, as I said, very challenging. It's certainly not for everyone, but if you are okay with watching somewhat intense films, then this is another film that I strongly recommend. This has also great insights, if you will, on the types of consequences that can be had in terms of human relationships between parents and children, in particular mothers and daughters, and also the types of relationships and consequences that can arise when you have emotions that can really reach a sort of boiling point. This is a super heightened melodrama, and even the great melodramas, they can really go to the extreme in terms of how the characters develop and become so hyper-realized in the context of the progression of the narrative. So much so that sometimes it's just what happens in this film is really quite astounding, unbelievable, and shocking. But then again, so are the great melodramas of the time. This has been compared, I think, quite reasonably so to, for instance, the great heightened narrative works of Shakespeare, for instance. I mean, there are certain elements of tragedy and pathos and remorse and real depictions of authentic, true portraits of human dignity that I think we have seen in some of the greatest examples of Shakespeare. So you are getting as well a prime example of a supreme work of art in cinema that is by this filmmaker Lino Brocka. So this is the film Insiang or Insiang. So again, from 1976. This is one that I consider myself very fortunate to be able to see. Once again, it is a film that is somewhat difficult in terms of its subject matter, and so I find it quite gritty and tough. And sometimes it can be quite mean. Talk about gritty and tough and mean. I think the opening moments of this film, I think, are enough to shake one to one's. It just shakes one off of one's comfort zone. Really quite intense stuff. So if you are somewhat hesitant to watch films of a certain intense nature in terms of their subject matter, then perhaps you should just try to look up more information about this film before deciding whether or not to purchase it, my friends. But if you are okay with watching very challenging works that have deep down authentic portraits of human drama at their cores, then please check out the film Insiang, and if you can, check it out in the context of the World Cinema Project Box number 2, which is right here. And also, my friends, Manila in the Claws of Light. These two films by Lino Brocka, as I say, these are the films by this wonderful filmmaker in the Criterion collection at the moment. It would be great if there were more. I understand that Brocka was a very prolific filmmaker during his lifetime, and so the more films that could be introduced in the Criterion collection by Brocka, I think the better off we all are, because I think just by seeing these two films alone, which themselves are, as I say, towering works of art, just incredibly magnetic and undeniably unforgettable. Just by having these films, I think we are very fortunate. It would be great if we had more films by Brocka, but I count myself very fortunate that we have at least these, which are just supreme examples of cinema from the Philippines. So, my dear friends, for your consideration, if you are interested, I strongly recommend Manila in the Claws of Light and Insiang for your consideration, my friends. Okay, so that's it for now. So until we meet again, my friends, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great films. So until we meet again, cheers.